10 reasons why Mandarin is an easy language to learn? Have you ever heard that Chinese is the most complex language to learn? It was something we were taught a lot as a kid. Those Chinese characters are confused just by looking at them, and the tones for each word are strange to an English speaker. While we agree that tones must be conquered to talk and characters must be mastered to write, we disagree that Mandarin Chinese is the most difficult language to learn. China's official language is Mandarin Chinese. Any reference to Chinese in this blog refers to Mandarin Chinese alone, not other Chinese dialects or languages. In this article, we'll show why learning Mandarin Chinese is much simpler than you believe. Are you able to learn Mandarin Chinese? Able to learn Mandarin Chinese? Naturally, if you want to reach a high level, it will take time. Still, we've met numerous students who studied for just a few months, although very carefully, and were able to communicate very quickly in Mandarin after that time. Continue such an endeavor for a year, and you will most likely achieve what most people consider fluency. Certainly not impossible. Many factors determine how difficult a language is. Still, your attitude is undoubtedly one of them and is the most easily influenced. Although you have little prospect of altering the Chinese writing system, you may change your perspective. In this essay, we'll show you several features of the Chinese language and explain why they make learning the language much more straightforward than you may imagine. Of course, some elements make learning Chinese more complicated than you realize, or maybe as complex, sometimes even the same things from various perspectives or at different degrees of ability. This post, however, is not about that. This post intends to motivate you by focusing on the little things. For an opposing viewpoint, we've prepared a subtle reference titled Why Mandarin Chinese is More Challenging Than You Think. If you already study Chinese and want to know why it's not always easy, the post could help, but we'll concentrate on the simple stuff below. Easing the learning process. We'll make some assumptions before we get into the precise variables that make learning Mandarin simpler than you would believe. You are a native English or another non-tonal language unrelated to Chinese in any way, which would be most languages in the West. You may not have learned another foreign language, or you may have studied one in school. If your original language is linked to or affected by Chinese, for example, Japanese, which uses many of the same characters, learning Chinese will be significantly more straightforward, but what follows is true. Coming from another tonal language makes it simpler to comprehend what tones are, but knowing them in Mandarin is not necessarily easier. Different tones. In the other piece, we highlight the disadvantages of learning a language unconnected to your language. Furthermore, we're referring to striving for a basic level of conversational fluency in which you can speak about common issues you're acquainted with and comprehend what others say about these topics if directed at you. Approaching advanced or near-native levels takes a whole new degree of dedication, and other criteria become more important. Incorporating written language provides additional depth. 10 reasons why Mandarin is an easy language to learn. No gender cases. When studying French, you must remember whether each word should be lo or la. When learning German, you must remember der, die, and das. There is no grammatical gender in Chinese. Since they are pronounced identically in spoken Mandarin, he, she, and it has no specific meanings. Easy. Relatively easy word order. Word order in Chinese may be complex, although this becomes more obvious at higher levels. As a novice, you must memorize a few patterns, and after you have done so, you can fill in the phrases you have learned, and others will understand. Even if you mix things up, people will typically understand as long as the information you want to express is basic. It helps because the entire word order is similar to English, i.e., subject verb object, I love you. Easy. Logical number system. Some languages have unique counting systems. In French, 99 is pronounced for 2019, in Danish, 70 is pronounced half-fourth, while in Swedish, 90 is pronounced half-fifth. Chinese is a very easy language. 11 represents 10-1, 250 represents 2-105-10, while 9490 represents 9-1409-10. Numbers are a little more difficult since a new term is used every 4 zeros rather than every 3, as in English, but it's still not difficult to learn to count. Easy. logical character and word creation. Suppose you're skilled in Greek or Latin. In that case, you may occasionally recognize the word roots while learning terms in European languages. Still, if you pick a random phrase, like this one, you can't expect to comprehend how each word is created. That is something you can do in Chinese. It offers many substantial benefits. Let's look at some instances of sophisticated vocabulary that are simple to acquire in Chinese but difficult to master in English. In Chinese, leukemia means blood cancer. Affricate means stop friction sound. This relates to sounds like ch in church, which has a stop, a t sound, followed by friction, a sh sound. If you didn't know what these terms meant in English before looking at a direct translation of the Chinese language, you probably do now. It is not an exception in Chinese, it is the standard. Easy. No verb conjugations. Many people relate second language acquisition with lengthy verb conjugations, partly because of poor teaching methods. If you want to be correct while learning Spanish or French, you must remember how the verb changes with the subject. It is also available in English, although it is much simpler. We don't claim to have. There are no verb inflections in Chinese. Certain particles alter the function of verbs, but there are no long lists of verb forms to memorize. If you know how to pronounce can, look, you may use it to refer to any individual or historical period. It will still appear the same. Easy. No grammatical cases. In English, we treat pronouns differently depending on whether they are the subject or the object of a phrase. We say he speaks to her, not him talks to her. In several other languages, you must keep track of many items, including not just pronouns but also nouns. Nothing of the kind in Chinese. Me refers to oneself in any context. The lone exception is the plural we, which contains an additional suffix. Easy. Flexible parts of speech. When learning languages other than Chinese, you need to remember different forms of the in most languages outside Chinese. Understanding a word's correct form depends on whatever part of speech it is supposed to be used in. In English, for example, we say ice, noun, icy, adjective, and to ice, over, /freeze, verb. These seem to be distinct. However, in Chinese, they might all be expressed by a single verb, bng, which encompasses the meaning of all three. Unless you know the context, you won't know which one it is. It makes speaking and writing considerably simpler since you don't have to know as many distinct forms. Easy. Hacks for difficult issues. Hopefully, you now see that learning Chinese isn't as complicated as you thought. Another factor is that Chinese is much more hackable than any other language we've studied. What exactly do we mean? In this context, hacking involves knowing how the language works and using that information to construct clever learning methods. It is particularly true of the writing system. The job of learning Chinese characters is onerous if approached similarly to studying French words. Sure, French terms contain prefixes, suffixes, and the like. If your Latin and Greek are up to scratch, you may be able to utilize this information to your advantage and grasp how current words are formed. That is not conceivable for the ordinary student. Many terms in French cannot be broken down or comprehended without extensive etymological study. Of course, you may split them down in any way that makes sense. Syllables correspond to characters, Chinese characters. However, in Chinese, you do not need to do so. It is because each Chinese syllable corresponds to a single Chinese letter. That leaves minimal space for alteration, which means that, unlike words in English, which may gradually lose their spelling and evolve, Chinese characters are far more permanent. Yes, things change, but not all that drastically. It also implies that the pieces that make up the characters are still there and may be comprehended on their own, making understanding much simpler. All of this means that learning Chinese doesn't have to be complicated. Yes, achieving an advanced level requires a lot of time and effort. Still, essential conversational fluency is within everyone's grasp if they work hard enough. Will it take longer than learning Spanish to attain the same level? Possibly, but not by much if we consider spoken language. Easy to pronounce. Throughout its history, English has absorbed and adapted numerous vocabulary from other languages, making pronunciation challenging for English learners. It is not the case with Mandarin Chinese. We have a few terms from other languages, such as sofa. Yet, the pronunciation is straightforward. It sounds close to how the original word was spoken. Furthermore, pinyin makes it simple to learn pronunciation. Of course, many characters in Mandarin Chinese have the same accent. To a novice, it may seem quite perplexing. However, as you will soon discover, individuals have no trouble understanding the meaning of each phrase because of the context. Conclusion. As can be seen, there are several reasons why learning Chinese is easier than you think. So, if you want to study Chinese, remember that all languages have distinct obstacles. Still, they also have characteristics that make them simple.